And we are live. Hello, my name is Rachel Barenbaum. I'm the author of A Bend in the Stars. And today I am so unbelievably honored and totally fangirling because I have the one and only Honoree Fanonne Jeffers, whose incredible, amazing debut novel just dropped. It's called The Love Songs of W.E.B. DUBOIS. I absolutely devoured every page of this 800-page magnum opus. I'm so excited to have you here. Honoree, welcome to Debut Spotlight.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you. So before we get started and jump into my questions, I just want to introduce you to my guests because this is your debut novel, but not your first publication. But we're going to go through your unbelievable bio for just a minute because this just will blow everybody away, including me. So Honoree is a poet, essayist, and novelist. She's the author of 5 critically acclaimed books of poetry. Her latest, The Age of Phyllis, won the 2021 NAACP Image Award for Literary Work, Poetry, was longlisted for the 2020 National Book Award in Poetry, was a finalist for both the 2021 Penn Vocal Award and the 2021 LA Times Book Prize in Poetry. The Age of Phyllis was chosen as the common read for the Scholarly Conference Society of Early Americanists for the academic year of 2020 to 21. We're not done yet. Hold on. We still got another paragraph. This is unbelievable. Honoree has won fellowships from the American Antiquarian Society, the Aspen Summer Words Conference, Breadloaf, MacDowell, NEA, Rona Jaffe, Vermont Studio Center, and the Witter-Bynner Foundation through the Library of Congress. In consideration of Honoree's scholarly research on Phyllis Wheatley Peters, it was unbelievable. She was elected to the American Antiquarian Society, a learned organization to which 14 US presidents have been elected. She's won the 2018 Harper Lee Award for Literary Distinction, and in 2020, she was inducted into the Alabama Writers Hall of Fame. Honoree is a professor of English at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, where she has been teaching since 2002. Now we have something to add because today she hit the New York Times bestseller list. She has been receiving starred reviews, even from Kirkus, from everyone around, rave reviews compared to Toni Morrison. Might I say better than Toni Morrison?
No,
never. Okay.
Never say that.
All right. Never better, but certainly their names have been uttered in the same sentence. She is an unbelievable writer, and I'm thrilled to have her here. Honoree, can you please tell me what is The Love Songs of W.E.B. DUBOIS about?
Well, this novel is it's a multi-generational epic, and it's in 2 parts. One part is we follow mostly the coming of age of Ailey Pearl Garfield from the time that she is a little girl, 3 or 4 years old, until her 30s. And all of her joys and sorrows and struggles, while they intersect with her learning what it means to be a Black woman in America and all of those political and personal realities that all entails. The other part of the novel is we get to know Ailey's ancestors from the time of the 18th century, some of whom Ailey will never know their names, but we get to know them and their story as they have lived on this same piece of land in central Georgia that began as a Native American village, a Creek village, called The Place in the Middle of the Tall Trees. And then now in the 20th century and moving forward, it is a farm, or actually in the 19th century and moving forward, it's a farm in a town called Chickasetta, Georgia. So we learn this, and then the story intersects, and then it moves away, it converges, diverges, and then finally everything sort of comes together at the end. And we won't have any spoilers, please. After page 325, there are a lot of people that are giving spoilers. I'm like, please don't do that. But they are. They're like, the book is so long, it doesn't matter. I'm like, yes, it does. It does.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
no.
matter. And I'm seeing such beautiful comments. Hello, Carla. Hi from Alabama. And thank you, Ricky Brody, for reading the book.
Right. So Ron Charles, right? Washington Post called it magnificent.
Wow.
What a review of a lifetime.
He
How
put
did that
prisoners.
how did that feel?
Oh my God. It was not only Ron Charles, it was also Veronica Chambers of the New York Times. The
Yes.
two of them really take no prisoners. You know, they are very straight, no chaser. And when Mr. Charles started, you know, the review, whatever I need to do to get you to read this book, I nearly fainted. And when Veronica Chambers said, you know, I haven't read a book this good in a really, really long time. And the thing that I think kind of shocked me about both of these is that usually when you read a review in one of the big, you know, Washington Post, New York Times, there's always that sort of mitigating paragraph.
Yes.
You know, even when they're being nice.
Right. There's one paragraph of something you could have changed or made better.
Yeah, something, you know, this was filled with a little bit too much exposition. And you know, I'm fine as long as somebody doesn't punch me in the throat and tell me, you know, you need another job. You know, don't give up your day job. You know, I'm pretty good. I kept going back over the review, like, where's the mitigating paragraph? And there wasn't in either one of them. And that was just so wonderful. Of course, I happy cried. I'm a happy crier. I will happy cry. Unabashedly, I will happy cry. So it was beautiful. And what's even more beautiful is, you know, you have the reviewers, and the reviewers are people who've studied literature for a really long time. And I'm not saying my readers haven't, but I wanted to know, what do people who don't review books for a living think of it? And so it's just been incredible to this overwhelming, this outpouring. It feels like, I've told people, it feels like a miraculous fever dream. You know? Usually the fever dreams are horrible. You have alligators crawling up the walls or whatever. But in this case, I'm just so pleased and so grateful that people have really taken this book to heart.
Well, really, I mean, the work shows too, right? This was not something that you just whipped out. All the work that you put into that is now paying off. I mean, it is unbelievable, the research that you did to make this happen. And I think that's what people are reacting to also. So I want to dive into the book now and get to some of the good stuff. And so I really wanted to ask you, I have to ask you about Ailey's family. And I understand that her voice came to you, these characters, right? They lived with you as you were in a graduate program in Chickasetta, and they came to you in your dreams with these lyrical voices. Can you talk later? Great.
Sorry.
I love that. So I wanted to ask you, can you talk about like sort of when they came to you and how they feel living in you as real characters?
Well, I've been writing Chickasetta stories since grad school. I'm an older dame. So I'm 54, and I've been writing Chickasetta stories since like 1994 or something like that. When I got my agent, Sarah Burns, all I ever wanted to do was write stories. And she was like, there's no money in that. Never, I mean, she's straight, no chaser. I love her. She's fierce.
Mm-hmm.
She is fierce.
And she's right.
She's right. She's a firecracker. And we are very beloved and close now because we've been together since 2005. So I lied to her that I was going to write a novel, but I had no intention of writing a novel. I just was going to write some linked short stories. And so I'd been writing about Ailey's mom, Belle. I wrote a failed short story, but some of it made it into the novel. But so what happened was I was like, okay, I'm going to write it, you know, an Ailey novel. And it was really just supposed to be a beach read. It was
I would not call this a beach read.
People always laugh. They're like, what?
Yes, that does not compute.
It was supposed to be a beach read. Light,
Okay.
light kind of,
I
cute,
can't see it, but okay, I'm gonna go with you.
sassy, right? And so then that's when the dreams started happening.
Wow.
That's when the dreams, probably about 2 or 3 years into my faux novel writing, which what would happen is I would write something and then um I would send it to Sarah and she would say, "Oh, this is beautiful. Where's this going? I don't see any plot here. How is this going to move forward?" And
Oh
she always had to
no.
say, how's this going to move forward? And the other thing is, Sarah and I weren't talking very often because, she pretty much, I mean, she's a mom. So she has 3 children. So she knew I was lying. And she knew. And, but she always said, you're brilliant and you're going to make some money one day. But you know how your mom will say, they're just, you come home from elementary school, they're teasing you because you're pretty. You're right. So that's what I was like. She's just doing that mom thing.
Mhm.
So, and that's probably 2 or 3 years into the faux novel writing is when I started having these dreams. And I would see a plantation house in the distance, everything that is on that farm. When the plantation, then it becomes a farm after the end of the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation did not actually free enslaved African Americans. It was not until after the war, and I would see it all, and I would wake up. And sometimes in the beginning, I couldn't remember what they said to me. But then I guess maybe 6 months, a year's time, I never thought that I should be writing any of this down, right? So maybe, run along, as I say. And I woke up one day and I could hear everything. And so I just started writing them down. And then probably maybe 6 months to a year after that, I knew these were Ailey's ancestors.
Wow.
That hard work began because
Wow.
I had this Ailey story, which was still supposed to be a beach read.
I still can't even believe you're saying that.
Everybody thinks I'm lying. I swear it was supposed to be a beach read.
Well, beach reads sell, right?
And I love a good beach read.
Who doesn't?
Right?
Who
And it was
doesn't?
supposed to be a beach read. And then this very serious story about Native Americans, the Creek people and enslaved African Americans.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I began to think about how to impose craft onto the historical portions, which were coming to me far easier.
Uh-huh.
It was just like breathing, that I was trying to figure out how to connect these two different, and that's when I thought of a framework of mirroring, right, of generational trauma. I have to tell you that the discussions that are happening with Oprah's book club on Instagram and Facebook are really helping me to dive into my own novel, right? Because you don't really think about the themes and all of that until after you're done, right? And so that's what happened. I began to think about mirroring these two and to think about generational trauma, but not simply pain, but overcoming the pain.
I love it. So another thing that you framed the book with that I would love to touch on if we can is Du Bois's theory on double consciousness, right?
Yeah.
This idea that there's a sensitivity, you write, that every African American poses in order to survive. And I have to say that I saw that in almost every single character, right? Two sides to them, the hidden side versus what is shown to the outside, or what you might know on paper versus right from a family tree versus what is the real character. And I was wondering if you could just talk about that for a little bit and tell us your thoughts around this double consciousness.
Well, the thing is that the Dr. Du Bois's theory of double consciousness says that African Americans always think of themselves in two ways. First, how they view themselves, and second, how the white world views them, keeping in mind that when Dr. Du Bois was born, it was 1868. Okay. So one of the things that I found very interesting, and of course, there are other portions of his work that go through the book as well. But one of the things that I thought about is double consciousness, not only the way that Dr. Du Bois talks about it, but in the way that every human being has a duality. Each of us has a road within that can go left or can go right. I don't believe that people are born evil. I think that's a cop out. I think that each of us decides, but there's not a big moment where you say, hey, I'm going to become a war criminal today, or I'm going to, there are incremental moments that we all have. And that's what I was thinking of in this country with these characters, in this region, in this country. How did we get to this place? It's not a big thing. It's a small thing. And that's what history is. There are little teeny moments that add up. But when you're looking back as a student of history, it's so obvious how this happens. But that's where being a novelist comes in, because then you look at the characters and you see what they become.
I love that. So sort of in this theme, I wanted to talk a little bit about Ailey's voice. So she's a young Black girl, and her parents are middle class and intellectually privileged, right? Yeah. And but she really feels this pull between the working class side, the Chickasetta roots, right, versus the city side, and what her parents want her to be like. And I thought that you framed it perfectly in a conversation with Miss Rose, where Miss Rose says, "Just seems something I always have knew about rabbits." Sorry, my accent is so Northeastern. And so, but I'm just going to go with it. If you could go with me for a minute. Right. Just seemed something I always have knew about rabbits. Hand me that there bucket. Then we go to Ailey's head, and she says, "I pretended I didn't hear the broken verb," right? She says, "I've been in the city. My mother and Nana ruthlessly corrected my grammar, but down south, I wasn't supposed to get above myself. There'd be trouble if I insulted an elder." And right there, you see for her this push and pull between these two worlds.
This push and pull, but also the way that African Americans of my age and maybe 10 years back, how we were reared. Everybody was, if you lived further north, at one point I lived in North Carolina. Then after my parents separated when I was 14, we moved to Atlanta. So the city, I don't know, because I was a kid. I know Atlanta. I learned how to drive in Atlanta. I did all of that. But that's a real tradition among African Americans who live further north. They will send their children down south every summer. You learn culture. You learn foodways. You learn how to talk to elders. I was not reared calling elders Annie, or what. You always put a miss on that. If you did not know their last name, you would say Miss Veronica, Miss Betty, or Mr. Bill, or whatever. So there's all of that. There's also, you do not correct an elder. Okay. Now there's another side to that, right? If you're having to get away from them, if they're doing something abusive to you, right? That's a very difficult situation. But in its best way, you do not correct elders, right? I remember one time I said to my aunt, my aunt Tweet, I was like, "Grandma's ignorant. You know, the way that she talks." And she was like, "Don't you ever," it was like, bam, right?
Yeah. That would not go over in my family either, by the way.
Right, exactly. No other people, Italians, Irish, people who come from I mean, African Americans clearly were involuntary, immigrants, right? But people who come from immigrant backgrounds, right? There is the old country,
Mm-hmm.
and then and so there's that push and that pull.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, Ailey is learning this,
Yeah.
as she goes along.
Yeah. I love it. All right. So I want to talk about one other section. These are like two of my favorite parts of the book, and they're no spoilers, but I just want to bring them up because I want to talk about that. We're going to go for it. So we're going to talk about feminism. And I think there are two parts because I saw a universal feminism, and then I want to ask you about Black feminism.
Okay.
Right. But the universal feminism, we'll start there because this really rang true to me. And I think probably a lot of readers. And we see this is Ailey's on the porch with Uncle Root. And Uncle Root says, what did he do? This is right after she's had an amorous moment with the boy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. And so then you describe her thoughts. And she says, there was no way I could tell him what had happened out at the creek, that I'd been naked when David and I had our falling out. There was no way to tell him about what happened with Gandhi either, that all this time I'd broken my promise to everybody. I wasn't really a good girl. I never had been. I just pretended to make everybody else happy, and look where that had gotten me. I had a broken heart, and I was still ashamed. And right. And this is just a beautiful passage. And this moment of I had just been pretending I wasn't really a good girl. There's so much packed into that on a universal feminist level. Can you just talk about that paragraph? This is like my dream to ask you this.
Well, one of the things I feel like with all feminists, and again, because Sarah and I have been together for so long and we're now very close, Sarah is a hardcore feminist. Okay. And she's an Irish lady, Irish American. Okay. And the thing about it is that there is your political feminism, your political principles, and then there is how you're walking in the world. Mm-hmm. And patriarchy is always there, trying to knock you off your feminist principles, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly if you are heterosexual, cisgender, and you're a cisgender woman who dates men, who wants to be married. Mm-hmm. There are always these gender roles that you grew up with in the larger society. And so there's always this sort of push and pull. The notion of a good girl, I mean, that's the thing. You have people who are feminists and they have their particular feminist notions, but then there's that patriarchal devil. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
be a good girl.
Be a good girl. You're not supposed to sleep with too many men. You're not supposed, there's all of that. So that's that universal.
Yeah. I mean, you just caught that so well. And then, you also have this other level here of Black female empowerment. And you've talked a lot about, the term strong Black woman really, right, is applying to a woman has to be, stand for her family as well as herself, right? That there's more than a layer of just standing up and being the good girl. It's a bigger term. And I loved how you talked about that and would love to hear you talk more about that.
Well, the whole thing about Black feminism is that, first of all, the notion of wife and family and all of that cult of domesticity of the 19th century, that was for middle and upper middle class white women. It did not include poor white women. It did not include Black women or other women of color. It was for specific group. Black women have never been covered by patriarchy, right? Even though patriarchy, I don't ever think is a good thing, but there's never been a moment where we've been called the weaker sex or any of that, right? So there's always that tug of war in Black communities because patriarchy, weirdly enough, has been aspirational for Black communities.
Oh my God. It's
right.
It's
a nightmare, but it's aspirational. This is among, sexist people, but this is the dream that Black women can be put on that pedestal the same way white women are not working, doing that whole thing. And so that's one part of that tug of war, right, of Black feminism. But the other thing is that particularly with Black feminism and the term that was coined by Alice Walker, womanism, is that you're not just concerned about Black women, you are concerned about the entire community. So children, Black men, you got to think about everybody, not just yourself. And so
that's such a weight, such a weight.
It's a huge weight. And then on top of that, people are policing your tone. People are, you're angry, or and the whole strong Black woman is, as I've written elsewhere, is about Black women having to constantly improvise to keep their children safe, to keep themselves safe, and many times to keep Black men safe. So when we think about that quintessential sort of identity, we can look at someone like Ida B. Wells Barnett, who was very much about women's rights, but also an anti-lynching crusader. And the majority, 90-something% of Black people who were lynched during the Jim Crow era were Black men. So you've got to take care of everybody. And typically, you come last.
Right.
You come last, right? And we see that in the book.
Yeah.
Where there are these constant, who do you protect to keep the community together? Who is going to get thrown under that historical bus, right, to keep everybody together? That's what Black feminism is about in a nutshell.
I love that you're opening up this conversation, and I hope that it will continue many more times, because it's important to, I think, distinguish and talk about the different aspects of feminism and what it means, right, to different people. Okay, so I have to go academic on you for just one question, because I love that you bring Professor Hartman's term of critical fabulation in.
Yes,
right.
I love. I'm a stand for Saidiya Hartman. I worship her.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I love the idea because so basically, I guess what it is that you have to sort of fill in history, right? You have a bunch of ideas, but then to make them real, to make history come alive, you have to sort of fill in these other parts to make them into real characters. And I felt like you opened the book by giving a narrative of the family history, saying this person it was sort of biblical in a sense of like this person got with this person. Oh, really?
It was like a Black biblical litany.
Yes. I'm so glad that, yes. So I read that right away. And then you sort of wrote the book filling in all those characters right afterwards. And I just loved that as a way to think about history and family, because I think that's not articulated often enough. So I wanted to ask you to talk more about it. I'm so glad that I had, touched on something that was important to you.
Well, the thing about Black history and Afro-Indigenous history, if you are African American and you have Indigenous ancestry, much of that is gone. You're not going to find a paper trail. You may have an oral history that is very small. And one of the things that I find really interesting is people are like, is this an autobiographical novel, right? And it's not. But
everyone asks that, right?
Everyone asks that. I think it's not just me. But what I think is beautiful is that people feel my love for these folks, and it seems real, and it is real, because in a very real way, I created a genealogy, a family, and I filled in blanks that I will about, history that I will never know. And so that's what the songs are about. And that's also why the narrators of the song is the collective God, a bunch of gods of the land. because they know what Ailey will never know.
Mhm.
Ailey doesn't find out everything about her family. She
Of
will
course not.
only know a little bit, but the
Mhm.
land knows. And I thought about what Deborah Miranda, the great Native American scholar and poet, talked about, her body being an archive. Right? So the
Beautiful.
land is an archive, the body is an archive, the blood is an archive, right?
Mhm.
But as a as a um as a as a as a real historical moment, that will never be known. But
Mhm.
as Professor Hartman talks about, you the critical fabulation, you leap into that, and that's what a creative writer can do. You can leap into it. And that's why when you read Professor Hartman's work, it's very scholarly and rigorous, but it reads like a novel. I'm thinking of Lose Your Mother, and then the other one, which of course, premenopausal brain fog, I forgot the one that came out, Wayward Lives, right?
Okay.
And I have that one as well. It reads beautifully like the best fiction.
Yeah. I think the best history does,
Yes.
and that's why I love that theory and these ideas and how you really pulled that together. So, okay. So we are almost out of time, but I have to ask you two more questions. All right. We'll try to fit them in quickly. Okay. I wish I had another hour with you, by the way, because
Well,
I
maybe
think you're
one
just
day in the
amazing.
after time of the
Oh
pandemic.
my God. I would love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, what is the hardest part about publishing?
Whoa.
I have listeners ask this all the time for advice. Like, what
I
did you
think
really struggle with?
the hardest part about publishing is so I'm a faithful person. Okay. That doesn't mean everybody has to be, but that your time is not God's time. And so there are people who, don't read poetry. So for them, I try not to get cranky when people say, like someone said, Miss Oprah plucks people out of obscurity. And I'm like, I wasn't obscure.
You were not obscure. I would not say that about you.
Sure, but to most people I was. Okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
keep it real. And so when you're working hard, and won many awards and all of that, but there's a place that when you're young you think about ascending to, and when you haven't, and you don't know if you ever will, it's very hard to remain classy, and I was a jealous heifer.
Oh,
I
I find that hard to believe.
It was bad. When I was in
Wow.
my 30s, ooh, it was not a good look. And so the thing about it is that you have to think about, it's coming. And sometimes, to keep it real, it may come after you've left this earthly plane. And so, and now that all of this attention has come to me, now I'm on the other side of it, and I'm like, wow, I wasn't prepared for this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely, it's beautiful. But
Right.
wow, this is a lot, And
Right.
for me, being a Southern woman, I'm just used to saying, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And so then, you just like hundreds of people, you're doing this, but I can't stop because that's my training. So that's
Right.
one of the hardest parts, remaining committed to your work. The other part is with fiction, because there is money to be made.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
For the
be
very lucky authors who work very hard and write beautifully with
very
talent like yours.
You're sweet. You're so sweet. Remember now, we're talking 15 years
Mm-hmm.
between when I got my agent and this book coming out.
I love that you're reminding us about that. Yes.
Right.
15 years, not an overnight success.
15 years when I had far more moisture in my skin. And so, and so what happens is when you really, you want to make money. Some of us have student loan debt. I have student loan debt,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's hard for you to keep to your vision because you want that, you want that acclaim and all of that, but you have to. And for me, fortunately, I found an editor, the great Erin Wicks at Harper, who saw my vision, and we were one on this vision. And she is not African American; she's a young white woman, and just wonderful, And I just love her so much. And I just want her to be my editor forever, literally. But you have to be true to yourself. And that is very difficult when there's money on the table. But what people see now is the vision that I had, that I did not sacrifice. And that's the hard part. But I hope that I will be a model for not only people to keep to their vision, but also older women. I've seen during this pandemic, older women realizing their dreams. This is our time.
Oh my God, I just love what you're saying so much. It's just, this is our time. This is amazing. And thank you for being so open and sharing. It's just, I think this is what you do in the book. For those that are listening that have not read the book, this is why people are falling in love with the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, right? This honesty, this heart on the page is what Honoree has really done. And it's amazing. So if you have a very short answer for our last question, if you can do it. If not, I'm ready to listen as long as you want to talk. And you've answered a little bit here, but people want to know, what advice do you have for a new struggling writer, or someone who's hanging on and, is in the middle of their 15-year journey?
I think, I love you back. I think that you need to remain and study on your craft. Full stop.
Amazing.
You just keep on your craft. That will increase your confidence level, right? And so that is what I did. I studied, I remained on my craft. And so then again, I had that confidence, and that allowed me to stay true to my vision.
Amazing. All right, Honoree, if you could just stay on for one more minute, I'm going to end our broadcast and sign off. Although I got to say, I'm so sad to be leaving you, and I'm going to hold you to meeting in real life one day when we're through this. So I want to remind everybody the amazing, incredible book that we're talking about today, Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Go out, run, and buy yourself a copy and read this. Honoree, thank you so, so much for joining us today. May you sell many, many copies. And to my listeners out there, may I see you on the next broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you.